Hello, hello, you wonderful human. Welcome to another uncomplication. I'm going to dive right in because I've got a lot on my mind, a lot that I want to talk about. And yeah, I'm back making content. It feels really good. I feel like just as the market kind of comes down and finds a reset, I've had to reset a lot. And I'm at a place where it's no longer a huge struggle to get on YouTube and share ideas. So I'm going to be doing that more often. If you enjoy that and you want to help support, you can check out my Patreon. Link is in the description. Ooh, while I was editing this, I just got approved for YouTube's memberships. So you can go to Patreon, but you can also check out, I think through YouTube now, you can become a member, and there's different tiers, and anyone who becomes a member gets preferential answering of comments. You get a little badge next to your name. Like, there's some cool perks. I'm just going to try it out. So take a look at that. It's a great way to support the channel. And yeah, thanks. Okay, so let's dig in. There's a couple things that have been on my mind a lot, and one of them is a video that I made a year ago. Feels like a lot longer than that. I think this was in 2021, so I think it's almost 2 years ago. But if I follow my little history here from posting comics, garden shots, and foam lightsabers to all of a sudden posting about Bitcoin as my own insanity commenced, this first video is one that I was making cryptocurrency for normal people, and it was this huge appeal for Bitcoin. At the time, I was trying to convince my dad, who was the ultimate skeptic, why Bitcoin was better than gold or any other investment. And so I posted that just, I don't know, as a thing I was interested in. And then, of course, the famous Wyckoff distribution video, which was, it's almost at 1 million views. But shortly after that, if you kind of look at the chronology here, we had Bitcoin manipulation part 1, part 2, talking about Ethereum, and then when it played out, and then, there's a few more musings, but this is the video that I've been thinking about. And it was From the Greater Fool to the Greater Good. And I don't know, it might be worth going back and watching it. It's 10 minutes long, but the part that stays in my mind about that is, even then, at the height of all the craziness in my crypto life, it was really distasteful to me that the recognition was, even if we do everything right in crypto, and the things that we're trying to do, the methods that we are trying to do to time the market and to trade, relies on this principle that there is always a greater fool who will come along and buy things at the wrong time. And that was really distasteful to me. And maybe it's because I'm a bleeding heart and I deep down believe that humans can treat each other better. It was just this recognition and this kind of sadness that the reason why you can make money in a market is because there's always a greater fool to come along next and buy that marked up asset. And a lot of what I was seeing in crypto, in YouTube, with the pump and dumps and all the scams, was this not only willingness to accept, but a full-on attempt to scam each other. And what it made me think of is a poem that I wrote, and I'll link to that too. I'm not going to read it here, but you can go check it out. A poem that I wrote years and years ago as I was meditating on how our world is structured these days. And I'm going to switch over here to my iPad for a little bit because I want to draw some of this. So here's the thought. In the old days, you had the notion of divinity, the notion of God that sat above all things and was the culturally unifying ideal. And then who did you have closest to God was the king. And, whether it was a pharaoh or it was a king of Europe, he's got the crown, which represents the sun's rays. And the king was, for all intents and purposes, the closest thing that you could get to God in this life. And then he had his servants and attendants and his the people that executed his will. And then there were all of these different layers of society, but most people were peasants, right? You might be in the king's court, you might have kind of this elevated position, but by and large, there was this stratification where there was the god on the top, the king, and everyone knew who he was. His proclamation was law, and there were uncountable human energies going into the support of that kingdom. And we had, at a certain point in our Earth history, a real problem with that. And there are a few places on the planet where there still are kings, but they're no longer so tightly tied to this concept of ultimate divinity. And so now what I feel we have, especially in the United States, but other places as well, and it's highly capitalistic and it's highly tied up with this idea of scientific progress, whole history there. But basically the way that I see it today is that there are still forces, and I'm just going to draw, for lack of a better symbol, kind of that combined sun and the eye, call it what you will. I think that the people that actually run the show, that make the biggest decisions that affect the most people, are faceless, nameless. We don't know who they are. And that is the big switcheroo, because their agenda, their world is still held up by countless people like you and I, and even people who are rich, people that we look at, I'm still going to draw a stratification here. Even in that 99%, I would say that in the 1%, there are probably still questions about who is actually running the show. But I think the big trick is that the United States was founded with a preamble to the Constitution that said all men are created equal. And granted, there have been a lot of problems with who those men actually are. It hasn't included minorities, it hasn't included women, et cetera, et cetera. But the idea is you start putting a little crown on every person in that society. And we have in our thought process that any one of us could hit the jackpot, strike it rich, become famous. And crypto, this is where it all ties in. Crypto is one of those places too, where the appeal, I think, is that idea that we can go from down here to up here with a few smart moves, a few clicks, a few well-timed Bitcoins in your balance. But the thing that I want to stress here is I think that is the big trick that has been played on us, is that because we all think we're kings, and we're not, but we all think, I'm the king of my castle. I can climb that corporate ladder. I have an infinite ceiling. It puts us all in a very strange form of competition with each other, where in the old days, in this system over here, there was a certain point in time when these people got together and they rose up and they threw this out and they said, no more of this. And now we're going to form, our own governing body of the people, for the people, by the people, et cetera, et cetera. But what I'm suggesting is that the big trick, the big kind of coup de grace in all of this, is that these forces fled and hid and then said, okay, you're all the kings. Now you're all in competition. So there's no longer really a situation where all of these people can get together and stop playing that game of the greater fool. I want to try and tie these things together. Bear with me. So in crypto, there is this concept of the greater fool is always coming along, and I have no problem selling my bag of crap to them at the top of a market, because that's how I get rich. That person has to be so uninformed or so motivated by fear and greed and the very things that I have I'm just speaking hypothetically here, that I have mastered and I now understand. And so for me to time this right and to sell it to someone else means that there's someone else who's still trapped in that delusion. And what I'm trying to get at here is that back to the greater good. Can there be a greater good in this day and age? And is part of our mass psychosis this wrong interpretation of how we're actually oriented to each other? Bear with me. So this is where my thoughts were going. It would be amazing if, as individuals, we had a greater sense of our interconnectedness. And I talked about this in the last video. Because this idea that, a couple weeks ago or whatever, when Balaji was saying $1 million Bitcoin and the fiat's going to tank. And as individuals, we're like, okay, I'm going to get my Bitcoin. I'm going to jump ship. I'm going to be safe from all of this. But we are so enmeshed that there really is no lifeboat that is not connected to everything else. I think that is the big thing to realize. And even for the 1%ers or whatever this imagined Illuminati or whatever is at the top, the rise and fall of governments and the tides of war and peace and all of these things, they are so tightly enmeshed that when we're thinking individually, we're at a disadvantage. And we're also impoverished in our spirit. Because if I'm sitting here in this one little house and I'm only taking care of myself and my family and I don't give a fuck what my neighbor's doing, I will gladly sell them a bad bill of goods if it means I can increase my bank account and, buy the nicer car or whatever. That is a way that is just taking, and this is the big trap that I'm talking about. Not only are we all wearing these little crowns and not actually kings, but we're all kneecapping each other. We're all competing in these really antisocial ways that weaken us all. And that was the big thing that was so upsetting to me about crypto, was the vision that it seems to have started with. That, okay, we've got a central bank that is issuing and printing money and they're setting, all of the parameters in place. There's no way to get ahead of he who prints the money, he who gives the money out. And so, okay, Bitcoin as this alternative, that by having a distributed ledger and having I'm drawing this as a hierarchy. It's not even a hierarchy, but having this connected network of consensus and agreement, that we're able to do away with all of this, and now we can just plug ourselves into this value chain. And that's a beautiful vision. And I think that I still want to believe that something like that is possible, that we could be able to do away with the centralization of power and communitize, not communize, but communitize our priorities. Because this game up here, these kings all kneecapping each other, is the same reason why we will chop down endless forest and we will pump oil from every corner of the planet, and we will do so grinning, because we know that we're, the people that are doing that, they're putting money in the bank for their family. And yeah, there's a lot of people over here that are suffering, but it doesn't matter because I'm making the cash. But all of these roots connect us together. And at the end of the day, the person who chops down the forest for their own short-term benefit is endangering all of their offspring, all of the future. As soon as you're out, you're on the other side. There was a great saying when I was back at my company towards the end, when everything got to be cloak and dagger and really gross. But I heard this saying that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And even though we all think we're at the table as these little individual kings, we're not. We're on the menu. And I don't know. That's how I wanted to start this video, because as I look at these markets and I think about crypto in general, I keep coming back to this basic illusion. Because in all cases in this diagram, I've drawn people at the top with crowns. I've drawn people, in managerial roles and peasant roles. And I've drawn people with kings and crowns and their own delusions that they're carrying around. My belief is that every single one of us is, in fact, a perfect, beautiful, divine creature who has within us the ability to dream and create and be whole and complete in every moment. And this might sound new agey, wishy-washy bullshit, but this is the big trick that's been played on us, is we think that our worthiness is linked to this game that we can never win. That our worthiness is linked to the job we have, the money we have, what we've created, how successful we are. This indoctrination, this enculturation has started since we were just coming into schools. And the grading system and the hierarchy that is there, the leveling up, and where are you? You're a third grader? Well, that's a lot more impressive than a first grader. And that goes all the way into college and the degrees you can get, and it goes into business, and it goes into, all the people I've been talking to lately are hyper obsessed with money and are hyper obsessed with this notion that the only way that I am going to validate myself and my existence and take care of myself is through the playing of this game. And I submit to you that you are already in this moment a divine being. You are creating this reality from scratch, from your own experience, from your own light that you are receiving and shaping. That you are the main event, but you have been told otherwise. And you are put in this trap where, crypto is the most exciting thing in the world. Why? Because it seems like a way out. Like I said before, you can be down here on the bottom. You could be working at, insert crappy job here. And gosh, if you had only bought Doge when it was at 0.01 and then it went up to $1 whatever, and you would be a billionaire. And your hopes and dreams, your aspirations, all of that just get catapulted out of this grind, and then you'll be worthy. And the thing that sucks is I've met and talked to people who did catapult their way out of this system and did hit it big. And those stories are not what you think. I know people that are suffering. We're all suffering. But people who have made millions and millions of dollars and are suffering all the more because the money itself does not fix this foundational belief that we are less than until we have more than. Man, long ranting, but that's just what's been on my mind. And when I get back to that, from the greater fool to the greater good, is there a way to participate in crypto without seeking to predatorily take something from someone else? Like, that's the big thing. This Bitcoin blockchain promise, it was there, but the reason that the kings, the hidden kings, I think, were not worried about it. Truthfully, Bitcoin was supposed to, in a way, topple these centralized power structures. The reason why they're not worried about it is, A, they control all the laws and legislature and all of the regulations that ultimately say what can and can't happen. And two, all you have to do is take a bunch of starving dogs and throw them this new idea and then watch them cannibalize each other because they're all starving for the same missing element. So there was no fear, or maybe there was fear, but it was, the system has been constructed such that even when a hallelujah moment comes, a new technology that could liberate, It's like it's not a big deal because they're all separate, they're all isolated, and they're all trying to climb atop each other's heads to have their crown be slightly shinier than the next person's crown, and it was doomed to fail from the start. So the way I think that I am taking back my true crown is not through the climbing of this ladder of economic worth, but in the recognition that I am full and complete no matter what I do. That I don't have to hustle. I don't have to slave and grind to be worthy. And once I realize that, it changes my priorities. Not that now I don't have to make money, I still do, but the burden is off in its value of me. The amount of money I have does not speak to the value of me. And I know this because I've seen shitty people strike it big. I've seen some of the most amazing people stay poor their whole lives. It has nothing to do with the economics, and it has everything to do with where one puts their attention. So I will continue to put my attention in this experience of life. And I will not trade a moment of it, a moment of sitting in this divine stillness, for playing this game that I know I will never win. It doesn't matter how much money I have in the bank. I am not going to get out of this hierarchy by playing a hierarchical game. Wow, okay, that was a lot longer than I wanted it to be. It is what it is. I will jump over and look at the market. That's what I plan to do, is to just share ideas and then, take a look at the market itself. And one of the things that was really interesting to me is earlier today, I was doing, I have a number of NFT project ideas that I've been working through, and I have a big one that's coming up with a friend of mine, another artist and a collaborator, that we put together a really cool collection. I applied for super rare. I'm really excited. Fingers crossed that I get invited onto that platform. But and my first NFT is still available. You can check for the link in the description. But in that, I was looking at some Richard Wyckoff stuff. Okay, so we've talked about this a bunch, and I definitely recommend reading these articles because they're so good. But the basic price cycle is this: accumulation and distribution. There are oversold areas, overbought areas, and markup and markdown. And one of my favorite sayings that I've heard is that there aren't bull and bear phases, there's just markup and markdown. And if you can really wrap your mind around that, I think it changes the whole perspective of what's actually happening, because bull and bear are narratives, and that is different than the technicals of a overbought, oversold marketplace going through these cycles, big and small, over and over and over. But if we look at accumulation, markup, distribution, markdown, this is, if you watch Tino's channel, Trader's Reality, which is freaking amazing, so good, just kind of minute to minute, watching this pattern play out over and over and over. This is what is happening now. We can see it. We can see it on the chart. If we zoom in, okay, so you come down, you have accumulation, and there's different sizes, scales, and lengths of time that things can accumulate. So we're gonna go boop, doop, 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 and then boop, 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 boop. I don't know what it's gonna end up doing ultimately, but you can be goddamn sure that there will be a distribution. These are not exact predictions. People sometimes get really hung up on the fact that I'll illustratively draw something on a chart just to talk about a concept, and then get, kind of called out for a prediction that's right or wrong. I don't even know if that even happens. I say that and I realize no one's ever actually said that. I feel that way. I want to be saying good information. I don't want anyone to be like, oh, you said something that made me do something dumb. You are at your own liberty to do all the dumb things you want. My point is, There is an accumulation and there is a distribution, and there is a relative scale involved where when you have a accumulation that takes place in a time period that is this long, you can, I think, anticipate that these Fibonacci's are really a useful tool. And so what's the biggest extension we could get from this rise and fall? Well, we got there. We got there almost, exactly in these extensions. And so again, if we're looking from here to here, and also pay attention to the structure. So we had in 2018, the big drop off, a lot more volatile, a lot less mature. We didn't have kind of the full Wyckoff distribution. We just had a spike. This is what we see a lot in altcoins and smaller cap projects. We just have a huge run up, and then everyone, the music stops playing and it tumbles. And then we had a fight back up to this fib, to the 0.618, and then it retraced back down, only to make a third run up and to finally break out. And so this time around, we had kind of that first market cycle peak, and then we had an even higher second distribution, redistribution, and then we came down. We did touch that fib that we eventually painted, but in this case, we came all the way down, we put in our bottom, then we came back up and hit the fib. In this case, when we touched the fib last, it was on the way down. So now that we are building our way back up, I don't know how sustained this move is going to be, but my premise is we have this accumulation. How strong could it be? And it could be strong enough to get up to the 0.618. That's kind of what this little drawing was supposed to approximate before heading back down, because to break out of these ranges, I believe requires more time. And this could be that, I was talking about the Wyckoffian pull, when we're at the top, we want it to go higher, we're imagining it's going to go higher, we won't hear anything other than it's going higher. And then after we've been beat up, shaken out, shaken down, and the price is crawling along the bottom, it's like we want it to go lower. We won't hear anything about it going higher. It's going lower, it's going lower. And it's those kind of opposing forces that keep us a little bit missing the moves. And that's why I brought up this second article, because I love this. The two rules. Wyckoff focused exclusively on price action. Earnings and other fundamental information were simply too esoteric and imprecise to be used effectively. Moreover, this information was usually already factored into the price by the time it came available to the average speculator. Before looking at the details, there are two rules to keep in mind. These rules come directly from the book Charting the Stock Market, The Wyckoff Method by Jack K. Hudson, blah, yada yada. Okay, rule 1. Don't expect the market to behave exactly the same way twice. The market is an artist, not a computer. It has a repertoire of basic behavior patterns that it subtly modifies, combines, and springs unexpectedly on its audience. A trading market is an entity with a mind of its own. And rule 2, today's market behavior is significant only when it's compared to what the market did yesterday, last week, last month, or even last year. There are no predetermined, never-fail levels where the market always changes. Everything the market does today must be compared to what it did before. Instead of steadfast rules, Wyckoff advocated broad guidelines when analyzing the stock market. Nothing in the stock market is definitive. After all, stock prices are driven by human emotions. We cannot expect the same patterns to repeat over time. There will, however, be similar patterns or behaviors that astute chartists can profit from. Chartists should keep the following guidelines in mind and apply their own judgment to develop a trading strategy. Broad market trend. Okay, so I'll put the link in the description. You can check this out. But the part that was important to me was this notion that don't expect the market to behave the same way twice, and today's market is only significant when compared to the past. So those are almost like a yin and yang of contradiction, in that it's not about the market is going to do what it did in the past, but today's market is relevant based on the structures, the past events, the time involved, and what was the I love the saying, it's like history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. So as I look at this chart again and kind of take those ideas into account, the basic cycles, the basic accumulation, markup, markdown, and the length of time that we can put in to have an accumulation and then have a proportionate distribution, that is how I am going to continue to look at this chart. And that factors in, like that article said, it factors in all of the other pieces that are going into that price action. So there might be talk about the Fed changing interest rates. There might be talk about banks failing. There might be talk about regulation. There might be talk about all of these different things that all gets factored into the price. And at the end of the day, it's crazy when you look back on this section of the chart from, let's just arbitrarily draw from April of 2017 all the way through to kind of that next moment that price was doing about the same, January 21. That was the span of 1,365 days, and there were countless news articles and speculations and big rumors and pump and dumps and all kinds of stuff that is all factored into that price. And we don't need to know anything about what those were. We can just go back and see how well this market obeyed these basic principles, how well those fibs were observed, and the same thing is happening now. So when I look at this chart, what's my point in all of this is I feel like it is only a matter of time before the inherent profitability of Bitcoin continues to do what it has done since its inception. That there is nothing fundamentally different about it, and that forward looking, and this is why I'm here making this video, because it is getting exciting again. It is getting to the point where, okay, this little fractal here, if we were to just kind of look at as an example, we went all the way down, we put in a bottom, and then we came storming back up to that 0.618 before we were rejected almost back down to those same levels again, and then continue to march back up. Now this includes the COVID drop, so that might be kind of, that's a big baked into the price. This, without COVID, maybe it would have just kind of gone like this. But, we're looking at when I put back on the rainbow graph here, the logarithmic regression, we've been kind of dipping into this green, but the overall march of Bitcoin is up and to the right. And so, it's so boring. And my friend Lucas, who I went to the ETH conference with, I was kind of talking to him, and then, he started watching some of my videos after we were hanging out, and he's like, oh, DCA, that's like the most boring thing you could possibly say. It's like, yeah, but that, for a normal person, is a strategy that just takes advantage of this trajectory while wiping out all of this nuance. All of the ups and downs, the accumulations, and the emotion, that whipsaw, that if you were to buy today, and that was your big buy, and it's because you think that the price is going to blast off, and you just saw some YouTuber, and it's like, oh, this is a breakout moment, we're going back to all-time highs, and you bet big, and then price goes around because you were hearing that in a distribution top, which is when you always hear those things, when price is breaking out, that's when the selling is happening, and then it goes back down, and you feel wrong-footed, you feel angry, stupid. I felt that way when I got caught a few times in the bull run. And so that's why, the DCA method is just a really nice set it and forget it kind of approach. Now you might notice that there's one other thing that I have on the chart here, and this was from, I popped into the crypto garden. There's not much happening in there. That's a whole other story. But Crypto Codex, who is one of the mods there, who's been making awesome content pretty much throughout this whole period of time. I just happened to check out his video today, and he was talking about this hash ribbons from Caproli Investments, and how it's one of the best performing indicators. I was just playing with it before. In Bitcoin, it has printed, I forgot what he said, like 18 different buy signals. And he does all the math of like, if you had just bought at that time, what would your return have been in 30 days, 6 months, a year, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'll put the link in the description for that video. It was really interesting. Here's another way to look at it is, if you buy in these moments when, from the technicals, if we kind of look at when these buy moments come, this is the weekly. Let's go to the monthly. A lot of these come from these points in time where our, the momentum is turning back around. And with all of this stuff, the indicators and the oscillators, I feel like their real value is to see what things did. They are not to tell you what things will do. But, there was a big buy circle printed here on the monthly, right as our oscillator is kind of swinging back up. And yeah, I mean, that's another way to just kind of play it. Have a strategy, something like this, that might use some sort of an indicator. Fear and greed is also one. Buying when it's fearful, selling when it is greedy. But I guess that's what I'm going to continue to explore on this channel is, how to uncomplicate this so that coming in off the streets, getting into crypto, you're not getting caught up in the Wyckoff emotion, because all of this follows different period or different cycles of news and tweets and all kinds of stuff that can mark up the price and drive the price down. And so, as always, my interest here is to just find different methods and ways of looking at the market that, unfortunately still takes into account that greater fool. But that's why I'm talking out against that too. So I'll leave it at that. I bet that was a long video. What are we at? 38 minutes. Probably do some editing. But that's what I got for you today. If you enjoy this content, consider becoming a patron. You can check for other links in the descriptions, other ways to support or get involved. You can follow me on Twitter. And yeah, I hope you're all doing well. And yeah, recognize your divinity. Seriously, you are everything that you need to be right here, right now. And anyone who tells you otherwise is full of shit. Cheers.